Jasper AI raised $125 million at a $1.5 billion valuation in 2022. By 2025, they'd laid off most of their staff and pivoted twice. Stability AI raised over $100 million, burned through it in 18 months, and lost their CEO. Character AI raised $150 million, then essentially sold their entire team back to Google for a fraction of the valuation. These aren't obscure failures. These were the poster children of the AI boom, and they all hit the same invisible walls. In 1999, there were over 400 publicly traded dot-com companies. By 2002, 90% were gone. The survivors, Amazon, Google, eBay, became the most valuable companies in history. We are watching the exact same pattern unfold right now. In this video, we're running the Dot-Com Playbook against today's AI landscape. We'll identify 5 specific failure patterns that killed most dot-com companies and show exactly how each one is repeating now. Then we'll extract the survival criteria, the measurable characteristics that separated Amazon from Pets.com, and map them onto today's AI startups. If you're building, investing, or working at an AI company, this framework will tell you whether you're on the right side of the consolidation or the wrong one. The first failure pattern is what I call the funding mirage. In 1999, raising $100 million felt like winning. Companies confused investor enthusiasm with market validation. They hired aggressively, spent on Super Bowl ads, and assumed growth would eventually justify the burn. Today's version looks slightly different, but follows the same logic. AI startups are raising at 30 to 50 times revenue multiples, valuations that require everything to go perfectly for a decade. They're hiring 100-person teams to build products that have 1,000 users. They're spending millions on GPU compute for models that don't yet have product-market fit. The data is stark. CB Insights reports that of the 1,200 AI startups funded in 2024, over 400 have already either shut down or are seeking emergency bridge rounds. That's a 33% failure rate in just 2 years, and we haven't even hit the hard part yet. The hard part comes when the cheap capital disappears, when interest rates stay elevated, when investors start demanding profitability instead of growth, when the next funding round requires actual revenue metrics instead of demo videos. The dot-com parallel is precise. In 2000, the total venture capital invested in internet companies was over $100 billion. In 2002, it was $12 billion. When the tap turns off, companies that confused fundraising for revenue discovered that their burn rate is a death sentence. The second failure pattern is the thin wrapper, and it's the most common killer in the current cycle. A thin wrapper startup takes an existing foundation model, adds a simple prompt and a user interface, and calls itself an AI company. The problem is obvious. If your entire value proposition is a prompt plus a pretty front end, there is no moat. Your competitor can replicate your product in a weekend. And worse, the foundation model provider can add your feature natively and make you obsolete overnight. We've already seen this play out at scale. Jasper built a content writing tool on GPT-3. Then ChatGPT launched and did the same thing for free. Their revenue dropped 40% in 6 months. Copy-trained AI, Writesonic, and dozens of others experienced the same collapse. The entire AI writing assistant category went from white-hot to nearly dead in under a year. The pattern extends beyond writing. Document queue as tools died when ChatGPT added file upload. Meeting summarizers died when Zoom and Google Meet built the feature natively. Email drafting tools died when Gmail added AI Compose. The survival test is simple. If OpenAI or Anthropic added your core feature to their chat product tomorrow, would your customers still need you? If the answer is no, you're a thin wrapper and you're living on borrowed time. The companies that survive this pattern are the ones building proprietary data flywheels. domain-specific fine-tuning that can't be replicated by a general model, or workflow integration so deep that switching costs protect them, even when the underlying AI is commoditized. Think Cursor, not because their AI is better, but because their ID integration is so deep that the AI is inseparable from the workflow. The third pattern is the capability treadmill, and it's uniquely brutal in AI. In traditional software, your V1 product stays competitive for years because features don't spontaneously appear in competing products. In AI, every model upgrade from every foundation lab simultaneously improves all of your competitors and potentially eliminates your differentiation. Consider what happened to specialized coding assistants. In 2023, several startups raised tens of millions to build code generation tools that outperformed GPT-4 at specific programming tasks. By mid-2024, Claude 3.5 Sonnet matched or exceeded their specialized models on every benchmark, and it was available through a $20 subscription. 18 months of specialized training wiped out by a general model upgrade that happened to get good at coding. The same story repeated in medical AI, legal document analysis, and financial modeling. Companies that spent years accumulating domain-specific training data discovered that scale beats specialization once the general model is large enough. This is the treadmill. You build differentiation on today's capabilities, and 6 months later the baseline has caught up. So you build new differentiation, and 6 months after that, caught up again. The cost of staying ahead compounds while the time window for monetization shrinks with every frontier model release. The companies that escape do so by building value that isn't dependent on model capability alone. They accumulate proprietary interaction data that improves with usage, like how Spotify's recommendation engine gets better with every listen. They build integrations so deep into customer workflows that the AI model is just one component in a system that would take years to replicate. They create network effects, where each user makes the product better for all other users. The fourth pattern is one that hasn't fully played out yet, but is already claiming victims: the regulation trap. AI regulation is arriving faster than most startups anticipated. The EU AI Act is now enforceable. California's proposed liability frameworks are progressing. Industry-specific regulators in healthcare, finance, and education are imposing AI-specific requirements. The trap works in two directions. Some startups build products that regulation now prohibits or severely constrains. Facial recognition companies, predictive policing tools, automated hiring screeners, their markets didn't shrink. They were legally eliminated overnight. The subtler trap is compliance cost. A startup with 12 engineers suddenly needs a compliance team, a legal review process, audit trails, explainability documentation, and bias testing infrastructure. These costs can easily add $2 to $3 million annually, existential for a company burning through its seed round. The dot-com parallel is the privacy regulations of the early 2000s. Companies that built their business models on unconstrained data collection, tracking users without consent, selling behavioral profiles, found themselves legislated out of existence by CAN-SPAM, COPPA, and later GDPR. The ones that survived had business models that worked within the regulatory framework, not against it. The AI startups most exposed to this trap are those operating in high-stakes decision-making, credit scoring, medical diagnosis, employment screening, where regulators have the strongest motivation to intervene and the clearest legal precedent to do so. The fifth pattern, and the one that ultimately determines who's left standing, is consolidation. In every technology wave, the initial explosion of startups consolidates into 3 to 5 dominant players per category. Search had hundreds of engines before Google won. Social had MySpace, Friendster, and dozens more before Facebook dominated. Cloud had endless providers before AWS, Azure, and GCP became the oligopoly. AI is following this pattern with textbook precision. In AI coding tools, we started with over 40 funded companies. The market is already consolidating around Cursor, GitHub Copilot, and 2 or 3 others. In AI customer support, hundreds of startups have narrowed to Intercom, Zendesk's AI, and a handful of vertical specialists. In AI image generation, Midjourney, Adobe Firefly, and the open source ecosystem have absorbed nearly all the market share that dozens of competitors once fought over. The consolidation mechanism is always the same. The top 3 gain distribution advantages and data flywheels that make them progressively better, which drives more users to them, which makes them even better. It's a positive feedback loop that kills everyone outside the top tier. The survivors share 3 measurable characteristics. First, retention. They have month-over-month user retention above 60%, indicating real workflow dependency rather than curiosity-driven trial. Second, data compounding. Their product gets measurably better as more users contribute, creating an advantage that new entrants can't replicate without equivalent scale. Third, switching cost. Their integration is deep enough that migrating away would require months of work and significant retraining. Harvey has all 3 in legal AI. Cursor has all 3 in coding. Midjourney has all 3 in creative generation. If an AI startup you're watching doesn't have at least 2 of these 3, the odds strongly favor it becoming a consolidation casualty. The 90% failure rate isn't a prediction of doom. It's a prediction of concentration. The value created by this AI wave doesn't disappear. It concentrates into the survivors who become disproportionately dominant, exactly as it did with Amazon, Google, and Facebook after the dot-com crash. The lesson from every technology cycle is the same. The wave creates the opportunity, but only companies with genuine structural advantages survive the consolidation. The funding mirage, the thin wrapper, the capability treadmill, the regulation trap, and the consolidation endgame. These 5 patterns will claim 90% of today's AI startups. The question is whether the company you're building, investing in, or working at has the characteristics that place it in the surviving 10%. If this framework helps you evaluate AI companies with clearer eyes, whether as a builder, investor, or customer, subscribe. We publish deep structural analyses of the AI economy every week. No hype, no cheerleading, just pattern recognition applied to the fastest moving market in history. See you in the next one.